Hello, beloved. I am so glad. Last week I celebrated my 35th anniversary with a woman who has taught me a lot about a lot of things. And one of the things she teaches me about is empathy and how to have it. And she teaches it in her classes, and I learn from it every day. And I needed it today because I was not feeling very empathetic for some moments today, specifically about something I read that Herschel Walker said. Now, you may or may not know who Herschel Walker is. I know Herschel Walker from the way back. I remember him as the first freshman to make All-American consensus. He won the Heisman Trophy. He was a Cowboy when the Cowboys were the laughingstock of the league, like they are now. And he, because he's the only good player on the team, was traded to the Minnesota Vikings. And that trade gave us the dynasty of the 90s. So thank you, Herschel Walker. I will forever be in your debt. However, he's now running for Senate. And everybody has a right to do that. In the Senate, we're supposed to have people who are thoughtful, intelligent, more than intelligent, better than we are. They're supposed to be wiser, smarter, better read, better thinkers, better doers, better everything. That's the ideal, of course, but we never get it. But, I mean, shouldn't we have a kind of higher standard than we seem to be having right here? Because I read in a article in a magazine called Jezebel, which kind of tells you kind of where it leans. It's left of center, and I don't always agree with everything that it says in this article. But there was something that really sort of hopped out at me, and I want to share it with you. So Georgia's Republican candidate for Senate, and by the way, I think that Methodism has always had not quite an unwritten rule, and it's one of those pretty serious rules that we want to be careful with around and against getting involved directly in politics. And I think that that is a wise idea, something that I have chafed against from time to time, but I think it's a good barrier to have and a necessary barrier. When you bring God into the equation, then you're in my playground. You're in my world. You're in my marketplace. And I feel like I can respond to those things. So this is not a criticism of particular policies, but of words that were said. So Georgia's Republican candidate for a Senate said Tuesday that if you're trans, quote, Jesus might not recognize you. Because he made you a boy, he made you a girl. Because I can tell you right now, they're telling young kids in school you can be a boy tomorrow if you're a girl. The God he's talking about, the God that he's talking about, could take all of the molecules in my body and suddenly scatter them to the four winds, move them throughout the universe, and then in a blink of an eye, bring them all back together, and here I would be. And for all you know, it just happened. Poof! God is capable of that. Let me tell you a joke. Sharon is on an operating table. She's having a regular procedure done, but something goes wrong and poof, oh, she dies. Soul goes up to heaven, and God sees her and says, Sharon, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here for 30 years. And Sharon says, well, it just kind of happened. God says, Sharon, go back down. Go on. So Sharon goes back down to earth and decides, well, I've got 30 years. I'm going to make it the best 30 years I can possibly do. So she walks into her local plastic surgeon and she gets Botox and some lips done and a little lift here and there, and just gets a whole package. And she's very happy and she walks out and gets hit by a bus. Gets up to heaven, sees God, and goes over and says, God, what were you thinking? What were you doing? God says, well, Sharon, I didn't recognize you. That's one way to think about it. a better way to think about it is from the mouth of the warrior David, the warrior poet, a man acquainted with grief and sorrow and his own bad action, but always loved by God. And he writes a poem that's set to music. That's what the Psalms are, poetry. And the thing about poetry, as you may know, is that the poet uses images and metaphor not to signify a direct one-to-one connection with reality. In other words, if the poet says, the sky is angry, the sky is not in fact angry because the sky does not have feelings. But that word conjures up in your mind what an angry sky might look like if it were angry. It's a marvelously economical tool, poetry is, to give you images. So anyway, the poet says, and I'm just going to read part of it. I encourage you to read the whole thing because it's lovely, beautiful poetry. 139, beginning with verse 13. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and time will change your body. Things about your physicalness will change, but you are always fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I'm one of those works, and you are one of those works. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you. When I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body, and all the days ordained for me were written in your book, before any one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I am awake, I am still with you. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts, and see if there are any offensive ways in me, and lead me into the way everlasting. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. However you are right now, however you will be then, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And because we are fearfully and wonderfully made, we should take care of each other. I pray that you will let God know your anxious thoughts, and that he will give you the grace to see if there's any offensive way in you, as I ask the same of me. That is how we will build the kingdom. God bless.